Imagine standing in the center of Paris today. It is chaotic, loud, and bursting with life. Cars are honking, thousands of tourists are swarming the sidewalks, and the energy is relentless. Now, I want you to freeze that image and strip it all away. Travel back to 1838. We are told this was the height of the Industrial Revolution, a time of exploding population growth and bustling commerce. Yet when we look at the very first photographs taken of this era, we see something that defies logic. We see ghost towns. Look at the famous daguerreotype of the Boulevard du Temple taken by Louis Daguerre. We are told this was a busy morning in a city of 1 million people. Yet look at the street. It is completely terrifyingly empty. There are no carriages, no merchants, no crowds, just one solitary figure having his shoes shined in the bottom corner. Historians have a convenient excuse for this. They say the exposure time was too long, 10 minutes or more, so moving people simply didn't register on the film. It sounds plausible until you actually think about the physics of it. If thousands of people were walking down that street, even as ghosts, they would leave a blur. They would leave a gray haze of motion. But the street isn't blurry, it is pristine, it is desolate. And this isn't just Paris. When you start digging into the earliest photographic archives of St. Petersburg, London, Washington, D.C., and Rome, you find the exact same anomaly. Massive imperial cities built for millions, standing completely abandoned under a gray, lifeless sky. By the end of this video, you are going to see the visual evidence that supports what the great writers of the 19th century were trying to tell us in code. We didn't build these cities. We found them. We are going to look at the impossible architecture that horse and buggy civilizations supposedly constructed, and the eerie silence that suggests a global reset event occurred right before our official history books began. I have spent months analyzing hundreds of high-resolution images from the mid-19th century, zooming in on details that were never meant to be seen. What I found changes the entire timeline of human civilization. But before we get to the ruins of the old world, we need to understand the magnitude of the lie we are living in. Let's begin our investigation in Russia, specifically in St. Petersburg. Official history tells us this city was built on a swamp by Peter the Great in the early 1700s, costing the lives of thousands of serfs. By the mid-19th century, it was supposed to be the bustling capital of a massive empire. But the photographic record from the 1850s and 1860s tells a completely different story. Look closely at the panoramic shots of Palace Square. This is a space designed to hold tens of thousands of people. It is the heart of the empire. Yet in photo after photo, it is practically deserted. You will see perhaps 3 or 4 people standing aimlessly in a plaza the size of 10 football fields. These aren't just early mornings. The shadows indicate midday sun. The sheer emptiness evokes a sense of post-apocalyptic dread rather than imperial grandeur. The skeptics will scream, "Exposure time," again, but look at the ground. It is dirt. We are looking at architecture that rivals the greatest achievements of Rome. Massive granite columns, perfectly symmetrical palaces, cathedral domes covered in hundreds of kilograms of gold, and yet the streets surrounding them are unpaved mud tracks. This is the first major logical gap that the reset theory exposes. We are seeing a discrepancy between the technology of the architecture and the technology of the inhabitants. The buildings speak of a civilization with advanced engineering, master stonemasonry, and a deep understanding of acoustics and geometry. The streets, however, speak of a civilization that has barely mastered the wheel. It looks exactly like a group of survivors who have moved into the ruins of a superior, vanished race. They are squatting in palaces they could not possibly build, walking on dirt roads because they have forgotten how to pave them. Consider St. Isaac's Cathedral. We are told it was completed in 1858. The official story is that 400,000 workers labored over 40 years to build it. We are told they moved solid granite columns weighing 114 tons each, transporting them from Finland on wooden barges and erecting them by hand using ropes and pulleys. 114 tons. For context, a modern Boeing 757 weighs about 100 tons. We are supposed to believe that illiterate serfs in sandals eating cabbage soup managed to quarry, polish, and transport monolithic stones heavier than a commercial airliner with perfect mathematical precision. And they did this without hydraulic cranes, without laser levels, and without computerized logistics. But here is where the photographic evidence becomes damning. If this construction finished in 1858, the photographs from the 1860s should show a city recovering from a massive construction project. We should see the remnants of the scaffolding, the housing for the thousands of workers, the industrial debris. Instead, we see a pristine, ancient-looking structure sitting in the middle of a mud pit. There is no evidence of the construction process. It is as if the cathedral was dropped from the sky, or rather, had been standing there for centuries, waiting for the new population to rediscover it. The few people we do see in these photos look like ants next to these giants. They look out of place. They are dressed in rags or ill-fitting coats, wandering past doors that are 20 feet high. Who builds a door 20 feet high? You build architecture to fit the user. If the user is a 6-foot human, a 10-foot door is grand. A 20-foot door is for someone else. Or it is for a civilization that understood scale and energy in a way we have completely forgotten. This phenomenon of the empty city is not isolated to Russia. Let's cross the ocean to the United States. Take a look at the earliest photos of Washington, D.C. We are taught that the Capitol building and the White House were built in a swamp, just like St. Petersburg. In the 1860s, during the Civil War, we have incredibly high-resolution photos of the Capitol. It is massive, Romanesque, dominant. But look at the surroundings. It is a wasteland. There are dirt roads that turn into liquid mud when it rains. There are rickety wooden shacks leaning against marble palaces. How does a nation that hasn't even paved its capital city's main street manage to construct a dome of cast iron weighing nearly 9 million pounds? The logistics alone are impossible. To float that amount of iron, to cast it, to lift it, it requires an industrial base that simply is not visible in the photographs. The photos show a frontier town that stumbled upon a Roman city. And then there is the silence. I want you to really focus on the atmosphere of these images. In San Francisco, shortly after the gold rush, we see panoramas of a sprawling city. We see hundreds of buildings, multi-story masonry structures, churches with spires, and organized street grids. But where are the people? This was supposed to be the wildest boomtown in history, filled with prospectors, merchants, and criminals. Yet the streets are dead. Did everyone decide to stay inside at the exact same moment? Or are we looking at a city that was found, not built? The narrative of the gold rush itself takes on a new meaning in this light. Maybe they weren't rushing for gold in the ground. Maybe they were rushing to claim the real estate of a ghost city that was left behind after the catastrophe described by the poets. There is a specific detail in these photos that researchers call the Mudflood evidence. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Look at the ground floor of these older buildings in London, in Moscow, in New York. You will notice that the first floor is often half buried underground. We call them basement windows today, but look closer. They aren't designed as basements. They are full-sized windows with arches and lintels that have been halfway swallowed by the earth. A door that is half buried becomes a window. Why would an architect design a window that looks directly into the soil? They wouldn't. This suggests that the ground level rose. It suggests that a massive deluge of soil, mud, and sediment swept through these cities, burying the bottom floors and then turning the second floor into the new ground floor. This connects directly to the darkness and the earth shaking that Turgenev and Nekrasov wrote about. If a cataclysmic event, a nuclear winter, a comet impact, or a volcanic winter hit the Earth in the early 19th century, it would have been accompanied by massive flooding and soil liquefaction. The few survivors would have emerged from the chaos to find their cities half buried in mud. They didn't have the machinery to dig them out. So what did they do? They just paved over the mud and called the second floor the entrance. This explains why in so many European and American cities, we have extensive underground cities, or tunnels that look like regular streets. They were regular streets until the catastrophe buried them. The official historians try to explain this away as lighting requirements or architectural style, but the structural analysis doesn't hold up. You don't build a load-bearing arch halfway underground unless the ground wasn't there when you built it. This architectural anomaly is the physical fingerprint of the 19th century reset. It proves that the history of how these cities were built is a fabrication. We are told they were built in the 1800s, but the 1800s population was clearly living on top of the previous civilization's disaster. They were the inheritors, the squatters, the survivors of the Great Death that the poets hinted at. But if the cities were empty and half buried, where did the people go? If the population was wiped out to the point where major capitals were ghost towns, what killed them? And more importantly, how was the world repopulated so quickly? This brings us to one of the most disturbing aspects of the 19th century, something that was documented openly, but has been completely recontextualized by modern history. We need to talk about the foundling wheels, the orphan trains, and the sudden appearance of millions of children with no parents. The empty cities weren't just repopulated by natural birth rates. They were repopulated by a massive state-sponsored program of processing children who seemed to appear out of nowhere. If a global catastrophe wiped out the adult population of the early 19th century, the darkness that Nekrasov and Turgenev described, then the most immediate consequence would be a world devoid of labor. And this brings us to the second massive anomaly of the 1800s, the sudden, unexplained explosion of the orphan population. We are taught that life was hard and people died young, but the statistics from the mid-19th century are staggering. In New York, London, Moscow, and Paris, the number of foundlings or ownerless children skyrocketed simultaneously. We see the rise of industrial-scale orphanages. These weren't just small shelter homes, they were massive brick complexes designed to house thousands of children. Why were there so many? The official story blames poverty and disease. But if you look at the census data and the sheer scale of the foundling wheels, revolving doors in church walls where babies could be dropped off anonymously, it suggests a demographic gap that natural mortality rates can't explain. We entered a period where children became the primary workforce. This wasn't just Dickensian cruelty, it was a necessity. The adult infrastructure, the factories, the mines, the mills, was still standing, but there were no adults to run them. So the system began harvesting children. In the United States, this took the form of the orphan train movement. Between 1854 and 1929, an estimated 250,000 children were transported from the crowded eastern cities to the empty Midwest and West. History tells us this was a charitable effort to give city kids a better life on farms. But let's look at it through the lens of the empty city theory. We just established that cities in the West, like San Francisco and Salt Lake City, appeared in photos as fully built but abandoned. The orphan trains weren't saving children, they were repopulating the infrastructure. These trains would pull into towns, the children would be lined up on platforms, and local farmers or foster parents would inspect their teeth and muscles like livestock. This was a labor distribution program. The Wild West wasn't conquered by rugged individualists building log cabins from scratch. The infrastructure was likely already there or partially buried, and this army of free child labor was sent in to dig it out, clean it up, and restart the machine. This explains why we see photos of frontier families living in wooden shacks next to massive, intricate stone courthouses. They didn't build the courthouse, they were the squatters sent to occupy the territory. But where did all these children come from? This leads us to one of the most bizarre and disturbing chapters of 19th century history, the baby incubators. Today, incubators are standard medical equipment found in hospitals. But in the late 1800s and early 1900s, they weren't in hospitals. They were in fairgrounds. They were at Coney Island, the Omaha World's Fair, and the Pan American Exposition. We have photos of sideshow attractions, literally next to the bearded lady and the sword swallower, where rows of glass boxes held live, premature babies. Visitors paid 25 cents to watch these infants. The official narrative is that a man named Dr. Martin Cooney was trying to promote the technology because hospitals refused to use it. But does that make sense? Why would the medical establishment reject a life-saving device for 40 years? And why were there so many premature babies available for display at traveling carnivals? The supply chain. Where did Dr. Cooney get thousands of babies? The funding. Why was the survival of these infants dependent on ticket sales? The location. Why place the future of the population in an amusement park? In the context of a reset, these incubators take on a darker purpose. Were they merely medical devices, or were they part of a repopulation technology that we have forgotten? The imagery is strikingly similar to modern concepts of artificial wombs. If the population had crashed and the natural birth rate couldn't keep up with the demand for labor to dig out the mud-flooded cities, Farming children would be the logical solution for the ruling elite. It sounds like science fiction until you look at the photos of the incubator buildings, grand, permanent structures built solely to process infants on an industrial scale. If the children were the labor force, what happened to the adults who survived the catastrophe? This brings us to the Kirkbride Plan and the explosion of insane asylums in the mid-19th century. Just like the orphanages, these weren't small clinics. They were palaces, massive, Gothic, red brick fortresses with sprawling wings, often larger than the state capitals or royal palaces of the time. We are told they were built to house the mentally ill. But why was there such a sudden, massive epidemic of insanity that required buildings the size of the Pentagon? The Danvers State Hospital, the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, the Buffalo State Asylum, these buildings popped up all over America and Europe around the same time, 1850s, 1880s. The craftsmanship is exquisite, Victorian Gothic architecture, high ceilings, advanced ventilation systems. Why build a palace for the insane poor? Unless these buildings weren't built for them. Unless these buildings were found structures, repurposed to house the traumatized survivors of the cataclysm. Think about the darkness described by the poets. If the sky turned black, the earth shook, and civilization collapsed, the survivors would be suffering from severe PTSD. They would be wandering the ruins, confused, perhaps driven mad by the events they witnessed. The asylum system wasn't about curing mental illness, it was about containment. It was about rounding up the people who remembered the old world, the ones who knew the truth about what happened, and locking them away in these repurposed citadels until they died out. This explains why the treatments in these places were so brutal: lobotomies, isolation. It was a memory holing operation. The adults who knew the truth were locked up. The children who knew nothing were put on trains and sent to repopulate the empty cities. We must also address the architectural style that unifies all these structures: the orphanages, the asylums, the capitals, and the factories. Internet researchers have dubbed this Tartarian architecture, referring to the lost empire of Tartaria that appeared on maps until the mid-19th century and then vanished. Regardless of the name, the style is undeniable. It is characterized by red brick construction, millions of bricks laid with impossible precision, arched windows, often half-buried, mudflood style, copper domes and spires, which we are told were for decoration but physically resemble conductors for atmospheric energy, sacred geometry, cymatic patterns in rose windows and floor plans. We find this exact style in Australia, Russia, America, and Europe. It is a global architectural language. Official history says these were built by different nations with different cultures. Yet a post office in Manila looks exactly like a train station in Helsinki or a courthouse in Texas. How did disparate cultures, supposedly separated by oceans and limited communication, build in the exact same style, using the exact same technology at the exact same time? The logical conclusion is that they didn't. This was a unified, global civilization, a world empire that existed before the catastrophe. When the reset happened, the survivors, us, moved into the shell of this empire. We turned their power plants into our churches because of the spires. We turned their healing centers into our asylums. We turned their manufacturing hubs into our government buildings. We are a cargo cult living inside the machinery of a superior civilization that we do not understand. But how do you hide a global empire? You burn the evidence. The mid-19th century is not just the era of orphans and asylums. It is the era of the Great Fires. Every major city seems to have a story about a massive fire that destroyed its historical center, conveniently allowing it to be rebuilt, or rather, allowing the history to be rewritten. The Great Fire of New York, 1835 and 1845. The Great Fire of Hamburg, 1842. The Great Fire of Toronto, 1849. The Great Fire of Chicago, 1871. The Great Fire of Boston, 1872. The official stories for these fires are often laughable. A cow kicking a lantern? A pot of glue catching fire? And yet, these fires supposedly burn down districts made of stone and brick. Brick doesn't burn. Stone doesn't burn. To level a city of masonry requires accelerants, explosives, or directed energy. Look at the photos of the aftermath of the Chicago fire or the San Francisco earthquake fire. The destruction doesn't look like a fire. It looks like Dresden in 1945. It looks like a bombing campaign. Walls are pulverized, steel is twisted. Were these fires actually cleanup operations? Was the ruling elite destroying the most obvious evidence of the old world technology that they couldn't figure out how to use? Or were they finalizing the destruction of the previous civilization to lay the grid for the new control system? The timing is too perfect. The fires happen, the history is destroyed, and modern wooden and steel cities rise on top of the granite foundations of the past. And it wasn't just buildings. We have evidence of technology that shouldn't exist in the horse and buggy era. We see photos of electric cars in the late 1800s that look far more advanced than the Model T. We see pneumatic tube systems that moved mail and goods under cities at high speeds, technology we are only now trying to recreate with the Hyperloop. We see the star forts, massive geometric earthworks found all over the planet, which are labeled as military forts but make no sense defensively. Their geometry suggests they were part of a global energy grid, perhaps generating the power for the wireless world that the catastrophe destroyed. This brings us to the most terrifying realization. The people of the 19th century, our great-great-grandparents, weren't primitive. They were post-apocalyptic survivors. They were walking through the wreckage of a Tomorrowland that had failed. And the Industrial Revolution wasn't a discovery of new technology. It was a process of reverse engineering the scraps left behind. We didn't invent electricity. We rediscovered how to tap into the wires that were already in the walls. But if we are living in the ruins of a reset, the biggest question remains: who caused it? Was it nature, or was it a deliberate culling? And are we approaching the end of our own cycle right now? To answer that, we have to look at the world fairs, the strange temporary cities that were built to be destroyed, and the final message they left for us. To truly understand how the old world was hidden, we must look at the most suspicious events of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The World Fairs. Between 1851 and 1915, major cities like Chicago, St. Louis, Paris, and San Francisco hosted these colossal expositions. We are told these were temporary celebrations of progress, built with staff, a mixture of plaster and hemp, to last only a few months. But look at the photographs of the 1893 Chicago World's Fair or the 1904 St. Louis Fair. You see hundreds of massive neoclassical buildings, towering domes, man-made lakes, and electric rail systems. The scale is incomprehensible. The Palace of Fine Arts in Chicago, which still stands today as the Museum of Science and Industry, is made of stone, brick, and steel. If these were temporary plaster models, why were they built on massive stone foundations? Why did they have fully functioning plumbing and electrical grids? The theory is chilling. These weren't built for the fairs. They were the remaining capital cities of the old empire. The World Fair was a cover story. The elite needed an excuse to open these restored cities to the public for a short time, harvest the technology, condition the population to believe they built it, and then, crucially, destroy the evidence. Almost every single World Fair ended the same way, with a tragic fire or a demolition order. The White City of Chicago burned down. The St. Louis Fair was demolished and buried in a landfill, where researchers are now finding massive stone blocks that shouldn't exist in a temporary structure. Why destroy billions of dollars worth of infrastructure? Because you can't let people live in them. If people moved into these palaces, they would realize the technology was superior to what was currently available. They would ask questions. So the ritual was simple. Claim, we built this amazing futuristic city in 2 years. Establishing authority. Show. Let the public marvel at the electric lights and moving sidewalks. Destroy. Burn it down so nobody can study the construction methods. Rewrite. Put photos in history books saying it was all just plaster. What were they really hiding in these fairs? The answer lies in the spires and the lights. The Chicago World's Fair was illuminated by hundreds of thousands of light bulbs at a time when the rest of America was using candles. Where did the power come from? They say steam generators, but the schematics don't match the output. Look at the old world architecture again. The obelisks, the domes, the metal spires on top of every cathedral and capitol building. We are told these are religious symbols. but physically they resemble atmospheric ether harvesters. In the late 1800s, Nikola Tesla was trying to tell the world about free energy from the air. He didn't invent this, he likely rediscovered it. The Tartarian cities were designed as a circuit board. The cathedrals were the power plants, vibrating with acoustic energy, organs and bells, and gathering static electricity from the atmosphere. When the reset happened, the grid went down. The survivors, us, moved in, stripped the gold and copper off the roofs, removed the radium fireplaces, and switched to coal and oil, a primitive, dirty fuel source that could be metered and sold. The World Fairs were the final shutdown of the free energy grid. They showed the public the magic of electricity one last time, then burned the wireless collectors and replaced them with wired, metered GE power plants. So, when you look at the empty streets of 1840, you aren't looking at a primitive past. You are looking at the crime scene of a stolen future. We are the orphans who were put on trains to inherit a dead civilization. We walk past their buildings every day, our courthouses, our banks, our museums, and we don't even see them. We believe the lie that we went from horse buggies to moon landings in 60 years by sheer luck. But the truth is much stranger. We are a civilization with amnesia, living in the shell of a giant we never knew. Layer 1. Look, if this video made you question even one building in your own city, then you need to subscribe right now. Layer 2, because this is just the tip of the iceberg. Next week, I'm breaking down the star fort map, the physical energy grid that covers the entire planet, and showing you how it connects to the pyramids. Layer 3. Over 50,000 truth seekers have already joined this channel to uncover the history they deleted from our textbooks. Layer 4. Do not miss the star fort breakdown. It connects everything we talked about today. Layer 5. So hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and let's dig up the truth together. Because history is written by the victors, but the ruins cannot lie.